welcome to episode 3 of The Broken Brains. I'm your host today, Bruce Parkman, and we want to thank our sponsor, the Mac Parkman Foundation, for helping us get this program off the ground and to you all so you can learn about the amazing things that are happening in the brain health space, as well as some of the tragedies that drive them. On the horn with us today was we have absolutely the starting point of this whole thing, which is the Mac Parkman Foundation. And this foundation is staffed by a group of amazing people that from their own walks of life have all come together. So as I say, is how God works, to create an organization that is literally driving the message home about what we are dealing with as a society when we talk about repeated head impacts and repeated blast exposure. The consequences that not only are we paying right now, that we are going to pay for quite a long time if we do not start paying attention to this problem. You've seen on other episodes, as we started diving into my personal tragedy and then talking to Marissa McCarthy on, the issue of brain health and what she's seen as a concussive specialist. Today, we have the staff from this foundation, and it's going to be just a great conversation. I mean, what they're doing to drive this message home, to create awareness, to advocate, to bend your ear, to grab you in the hallway and just let you know that they are not getting off this trail is simply amazing. So I want to thank you all for being on the show. And, let's dive into it. Why don't you introduce yourselves? Who do we got on this show today? I don't think I know you guys.
Let's start with Suzanne. She was the number two.
Number 2.
Right?
Yep.
Okay.
Number
two.
two.
My name is Suzanne Lyons. I am the acting executive director, and Bruce is my brother. Mac was my nephew. So there's a lot of love that goes into being a part of this foundation, and it's been a life-changing experience for me so far. So I really appreciate being a part of it. And now I'm going to let you guys go.
Just Suzanne, by the way. She does not have.
Yeah, that's it. That's all I got.
Yeah.
So I said Suzanne Lyons.
That's on her birth certificate.
Yeah, I know.
Well, you get to
like
go
Madonna.
next, Dawn. So let's see how this goes.
Oh, all right. Don Freed, and I guess I would be number 3 then, right?
Mm-hmm.
You talk about startups and young companies and the engagement rates of it, but my story was started when I crossed paths with Bruce a little over 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It was at your last I2 conference here in Tampa. That's where it was, and
it was.
I know it was very recent for you. I think it was a year at that time. So I think you guys were just a year into it, maybe, or just getting started when I saw you. And I tell you, it was just the authentic emotions that you had about the story. And I was there for I2, and then you just went into the story with me. You felt so comfortable about sharing, and so it was your authenticity that just moved me to do something. And I think I actually called Stacy when I left that, and I was like, hey, gut check for your boys. And it hit home because we were talking about it today, Bruce. Many moons ago when I separated out, it was early on in the war in early 2000s, and so I did my own small charity way of giving back and pairing people with alternative therapies that weren't yet inside of the VA system at the time. And this pre-acupuncture days, and so acupuncture was a big one. That community really stepped up, and a bunch of different ones. So the story just really resonated with me, just from my own journey from that time. That was 15 years ago. So in that connection, I just knew I could do something. I could have an impact with you guys, let alone from the business development side or the marketing side. So I was just moved that day that we shared that little bit of time on it, and we stayed in touch and started working together shortly after that. And that was now it's been 2 years, right? A little over 2
Yeah.
years. So, lots of
I think Stacy was there when you were there too, because Stacy reached over and grabbed me and said, "I got a boy, or he's struggling," and I couldn't help but overhear something. You were there too, Stacy, weren't you? With
I wasn't there, but we had a conversation right after that, and that's exactly what I said to you.
Who was at the vet jobs booth?
Yeah.
You were, but there was a woman there, and she told me
there was. That's right. Debbie.
Was it Debbie?
She grabbed me. She goes, "I overheard you. I'm sorry. I don't usually overhear." And she goes, "But my 21-year-old has been playing football since he was 8.
Mm-hmm.
He is hurting right now, and I don't know what to do." So I think that that I for some reason, Stacy, I always thought that was you. Until this moment,
No,
at the table.
No, that was Rebecca. But you're right, Dawn, and the fact of, for us, Bruce, for Suzanne, she's your family. For us, we met you through an alternate universe, if you will, because we were coming in through the I2 and the business side, and Don referenced the phone call he made. He literally was on break, I think, from the conference. You weren't even on the way home, Don, and you said, "I get that I'm here for I2, but I don't want to talk about I2. We need to talk about some other stuff." And, the first thing he brought up were my boys. And he said, I'm concerned about what they're doing. And he said, you need to hear this message, and you need to understand what is happening. And for me, because Don's my brother, so personally, first of all, I sent him there to do something for business. Then he comes back and he says, "No, personally, I've never heard Don ever, and I've known him his entire life. His voice caught. I'll never forget that, Bruce." And he said, "You need to listen to me." And I've never heard him talk like that. So it really, I did. I actually shut up, which doesn't happen a lot, does it, Don? So I did. I shut up and I listened. Yeah.
Well, it's for all of you to jump in. I remember when I came to Suzanne, I'm like, "Sue, I need somebody to help me run this." I was, of course, dealing with a lot of struggle, man. It was been a year. I was all alone. Mama wasn't around. My stepmother, Parker, was in the Army, and I'm literally just going out to the pier every night with my little 3-pound dog, because that's all that's left. And I'm drinking myself to death every night. I'm giving away big tips to these little redneck guys that are just fishing for sharks and stuff. I'm just talking to anybody. I'm just alone, and I'm surrounded by all these papers that are making me understand that I should have known something, because they're older papers, and I'm feeling the guilt. And I remember we had a girl picked out, and she declined the job, and you said, "I'm in." And I remember that so vividly, and I'm like, but the relief I felt, like, oh, thank God. Because, as you say, I love the way you walk through life. And I know that and you're like, "Well, what if I fart it all up?" And I'm like, "Well, we'll fart it all up together, man." I mean, we're going to learn. We're going to learn. And the mistakes we learned, we're just not going to make them again. And we're all going to grow. I mean, I think you told me I can't even spell foundation or something like that,
I didn't say that.
It sounds like something you would say, though.
No, what you said, what I said to you was, "Dude, I've been like raising kids and baking bread and building furniture." I said, "What do I know about running a foundation?" And you said, "What do I know about running a foundation?" And you said, "I've hired some of the most amazing people on paper, and they end up screwing it up anyway." He's like, "So let's just do this." You said, "Let's just do this together and see what we can do." And now we're almost 3 years in, and we've done some pretty awesome stuff.
Yeah. We have.
It just gets more awesomer, right? I mean, it's just all the things that are in play right now. It's just the snowball effect is there. So it's just growing and growing.
So, I mean, let's talk about that. I mean, I think a lot of our audience doesn't know us yet, and they don't know the dynamo that, you know, just the five of us with Nancy has become in this, we're, you know, the national space and our network of people. And I do believe that there's a reason for that. I mean, it's not because we're people you need to know, you know, we're not influencers, but we have created an influence. So, you know, why do you think that is? What do you think about the foundation? I've started the Green Beret Foundation. I founded the Global Soft Foundation, and they're out there. But, you know, and they're amazing foundation. They do great. But there's something different about this foundation and its mission. And I think the traction that you all have developed and the momentum that you talk about, Don. You know, why do you think that is? What is it?
You know, being around for the last couple of years, I mean, it was definitely different when at first go. I think we found our messaging a little bit more clear, and you know, it's the right place, right time. I mean, think about it with Dr. Amalu's discovery, you know, so 2008, circa that time, you know, the focus has been on CTE, but the wording has been around for 15 years, right? The movement's been around for 15 years. It's just it's gotten its news stories. It's gotten its national exposure. Nothing's stuck over that time period. And, you know, hopefully that we're the ones to do it in a sense. But I think we've been able to, one, distill the messaging down because it's very science heavy, you know, down to a very granular level. But two, I think it's the relationships that we've been able to make with the community foundations and, you know, little baby steps, right? So being passed around from one foundation to another little foundation, you know, to the Michigan Foundation, you know, that's leading to the national exposure or possibly working in 9 different states next year, to the developing of community outreach programs, to an app where we could, you know, really aggregate the content and the messaging around the LMS. I mean, there's so many things that have just unfolded in the last 6 months, especially just from the crossroads of people that we've intersected with. So I think it's just the quality of people we've gotten around in the last 6 to 12 months has gotten better and more important for what we're able to do. And it's just opening up more and more doors. And it's one hearts and minds, right? One at a time.
Yeah.
That's Green Beret stuff right there.
But there's a word you used, Don, when you were talking before, the authenticity and the purity. Because I think all of us have had experience in the nonprofit sector in one way or the foundation sector. And you see a lot of missions pop up, and it's personal to somebody, but it doesn't always get carried through everybody who's championing that mission. And I think it's, you know, being the last to come onto this team just in the last year, you know, it's a very pure mission. It's not a selfish mission. It's stampeding out to save kids, right? Create a safer environment. It's not taking something away, but just making sure that people are safe while they're doing it and that they know. And I think because of the way that this has been introduced and marched out publicly, people have listened. Where in a lot of cases, when you're taking something out public, if somebody disagrees, they shut their ears. And when they do that, you know, they become aggressive on trying to shut you up and shut you down. And you've seen a couple of those, Bruce, more, I think, on social media. But I think there's a purity to it. And all the foundations and the partners that you have spoken to or that we've spoken to have embraced this message rather than become defensive and argumentative and not listening. And that's unique because I've worked in the nonprofit space for over 20 years. That is, it's a very different scenario than I've ever experienced. And I'm not saying it's easy. It's not making our job easy, but it's making it a little bit easier to have the conversations.
It does. And I think the other thing, you know, Suzanne, when we got going back in the day, nobody knew what subconcussive trauma was. I mean,
Right.
it was just
Right.
CTE and concussions. When
Yeah.
I went to the first Concussion Legacy Foundation, remember we went there, right? CTE and concussions. And we're like, and I stood up in front of all these parents and all these NFL wives of deceased NFL players. I said, can we all admit that our loved ones are not here because of mental illness and what has been done to their brains? And they're all just looking at me. And then sooner or later, some people would come over, right? Because all they've heard is CTE and concussions. So Suzanne, what do you think since then? I mean, I think, what do you think about, the reality of this, becoming more and more an understood or a recognized issue by the public?
I think that we have like a different take, where we did 2 years ago. And I think a lot of it comes from you, to be perfectly honest. I think that when you speak to a room full of people or you speak individually to someone, you have so much passion in the way that you talk about your son in a really important way. It's not just, you're dripping with grief and you can't, go out. You are and I tell you this every time I get a chance, like the way that you honor your son is like nothing I've ever seen. And I don't know that I could do that, honestly. But I think that people are very much drawn to what we're doing because we're not trying to like take anything away. Like you said, Stacy, we're trying to make things better and we're not doing it selfishly. We want to bring everybody into it. And I think the fact that we have brought those people in, I think that's made some of the difference. I think the fact that we're not trying to, get rid of, we're out of that kind of angry stage and we're not trying to get rid of contact sports.
Let's not look at my Twitter feed from back then. It was pretty bad.
Well, she's right. I mean, that's the evolution of your grief at the same time in some sense, right? So it's you manifesting that in yourself that's helped shift the focus. Your focus changes on it,
right?
Too,
and if you haven't noticed, like some of the newer people that you're bringing in, if you were to look at them a year from now, they're going to be so different than they were like right now when you're meeting them. And I have 2 people that I'm thinking of specifically that I'm not going to name, but they're in that very beginning stage where they are ready to burn it all down and they're just not ready to listen to anything else yet. And, Karen Kinzel and I talked about that. She said, you're absolutely right. She said, eventually they're going to come to a level playing field where they understand that you kind of have to meet somewhere in the middle and you have to meet people where they are. And I think we're doing a good job of that now. And I don't know. I feel like in the last 6 months, we've just gotten tons of exposure. And I think a lot of that has to do again with you. Going and meeting a lot of people and just kind of dumping these like, hey, meet this person here's another one. Hey, this one wants to talk at the, and we're like trying to catch them all. We're like, oh, what do we do now?
But it's the quality is there.
The quality,
right?
Yeah.
The quality's there. Like when I tell people about the veteran panel that we had at the summit, and I'm like, yeah, those guys that like rode in on horseback in Afghanistan and killed Al-Qaeda? I'm like, one of those guys was on our panel and people were like, what? And I'm like, yeah. So, I mean, we're just like meeting these really great people that have something to say and really want to be involved. And if you look at it too, all these different people that are getting involved with us, they all have a different angle or they have a different, and I don't mean that negatively, they just have a different something to give. And I think we're still trying to figure out how we put that all together in one pie rather than having all these people out there, because everybody wants to do something and we all have like a piece of that pie. It's bringing it all together that I think is what we're starting to figure out.
Well, I think it's us that brings that together, and that's part of what the foundation's doing in the space is we're becoming, what do they call it? Like the dark matter in space, right? It's omnipresent. Like
here
we're
he goes.
like that here.
He's gone. There goes Don's brain.
Oh boy!
I mean, we are, because our tentacles are in a lot of things. I mean, we were just on with the company out of Europe, BASF, who knew that we'd be talking to guys like that for
BAS, right?
You
How
know,
can you help us? How can you, the foundation, help us penetrate the medical market for neuroinflammation?
yeah,
Well,
and
like,
make
you got a couple $billion, you can't figure that out, but we're here
$1
to
billion
help, man.
company,
We
right?
are here to help. Yeah, right.
Well, this is the omega-3 company, right?
Omega-3 company. That's right.
Yeah.
Speaking of, I have a guy in my dog park here who's he does business with him, and he has relationships. So I'm going to hit him up about some ideas. But just example, right? I mean, look at the General Hammer you met the other day, to Liz. I mean, look at the people that are doing things around us that are just gravitating to us because of the energy that's happening. So,
And
that's
I
a
think for
testament.
the first part, and Stacy, I think you've been around a lot of nonprofits out there, and I have too. And the ego and the competitive, all that, the Green Brave Foundation, we stood that up. It was all about a staff sergeant going, there's not enough care. We need to stand this up. Within a year, there were like 3 other foundations going to the same donors for the same problems. And it was like, why don't we just unite? And here, I think, what do you think? I mean, because we are kind of that unifying factor. We don't do services. We don't do, we are focused on, connecting, to your point, Don, creating this environment of networked individuals and organizations that are here to help children, to help vets, to help athletes. I mean, Stacy, have you ever, do you think that's, part of our wow, as a foundation?
I do. And I'll tell you, the nonprofit sector is one of the most competitive markets that I've ever seen. Like you said, Bruce, somebody stands something up, another person sees the dollar value of, oh, I'm going to use that to go chase that pocket of money, which I didn't think I was eligible to get. And it's survival of the fittest in the nonprofit sector. But foundations are changing. Foundations are actually coming forward now and saying, hey, we have limited funds. We want to see collaboration. We want to see, but that's not what the nonprofit sector has been about. They're not a collaborative group. They are very much an isolated, I need this for us to do this, and I need to survive. And so I think for Mac, we came out the door waving our hands going, hey, we want to be friends with everybody, and we want to collaborate, and we want to be that connector. And, we want to help make what you want to see happen and what you want to see happen. And we want to do what we want to do. And we want to work together because together we're stronger. That is not a common message, but it has resonated already with 4 foundations who are like, we love it. You guys are just so easy to work with, and you're just so agreeable, and you just want good stuff for the community, whether it's you or another group doing it. And we're like, hey, and Bruce, I've swiped your message of, we don't want to do everything. We want to do our part, but we want to help others do their part so we can get more done. And it's such a unique message. And not, I don't mean unique as if a foundation hasn't heard it before, but unique in the sense where we're not just giving lip service. We actually, all of us, we mean what we're saying. We mean we want to collaborate. We mean that we need each other, and we need to do more, and our actions show that. And I think that's truly what makes it unique.
Well, I think Suzanne calls that being Switzerland. And I've never been Switzerland on anything in my life, I'll tell you that. But I am definitely Switzerland on this. And, Suzanne, as our messaging has evolved, now, we've come across the realization that we've got to address our veterans issues. It was like, we're all about kids, and that's, part of the primary focus. And I think, for our audience, Suzanne, I'd like you to, talk about our position on kids and contact sports for, folks to understand what we feel. But the other part of it is that we found out that, oh my God, being a veteran with a mental health breakdown 2 years ago, and having to go through all that hospitalization and trying all these new things and then being diagnosed with, general anxiety disorder as a result of, all the explosions and combat and being shot, and it's stuff that I had, been going through. That was like, wow, we got to do something for these kids. They're kids that have gone to, their only crime was they volunteered for the military and went to war. And we as a society have, sent them to war more than any other generation. And yet when they come back, when they mess up, we throw them in jail. We have 1 million incarcerated veterans in jail right now. I mean, incarcerated veterans, so, what do you feel about expanding, our mission? I mean, you've been there with the foundation since get-go when we were doing Word documents and finding logos, and now, you've put together this amazing organization. We have, Stacy coming in to lead it while you come to the board and help me out. What do you think the veterans approach is going to do, and what are the opportunities or the challenges that you think it offers up for the foundation?
Well, so I'm the only one that's not a veteran of the four of us, and
it was your turn for the question, so don't be punning.
No. I have
like Hollywood Squares, man. So I think of Hollywood Squares. You can hand it off.
I actually have a really, really good answer for this because it's really how I feel. Knowing that you're a veteran, I have tons of respect. However, I think the first Army-Navy game that we served tacos at, I recognized the camaraderie and the brotherhood that people have, and how, what a wonderful...
Give the background to that. How did we end up serving tacos at an Army-Navy game?
Well, all I know is it was July 4th parade-ish, right around there, and you came bombing into your kitchen and said, hey, do you want to serve burritos at an Army-Navy game? And I was like, what? And you're like, yeah, we'll just, get those frozen ones and stick them in a microwave. I'm like, how are we going to do that? And I don't, the fact that we figured it out is beyond me.
How many did we serve that first time?
That first time we did 700, I think, and then we did 12 or 13 the second round.
Yeah, we froze.
Oh God! And just the simple putting that in front of us, I'm like, how? And I remember talking to the executive director.
Don't say no.
I know. I'm like, how are we going to make this work? And I'm asking everybody for some information. I'm like, so what do people that usually fly in do? How do you get cooking utensils and whatever? And we killed it. I'm not going to lie.
We did kill it.
We killed it.
Meatballs, yeah.
Yeah, meatballs. By the end of it, we ran out of everything but meat and cheese.
Dude. So just a little background, that was, we supported another foundation, but we saw the opportunity to raise awareness with all these parents that were there. And so that was really, because that was your first time really around a military group, huh, Suzanne?
Other than your all military rugby thing when I was 18, yeah, that was pretty much that was kind of for the most part. I mean, I've known Carmine and Jay for a long time, but to see the I don't know. And then we did an event in Dallas, and some guys came up and talked to you, and you had no idea who they were, but you had one thing in common, which was maybe where you were stationed or something. And it was you guys became friends like that. And I was no other place in the world. I've never seen that, where people just start talking and the next thing you know, and what's crazy about you too, is that you'll talk to these people and you'll actually send them messages. And next thing you know, they're coming to stay with you on the weekend. And I think that's so amazing that you have this built-in brotherhood in a lot of ways. And so I see, I remember being with you and sisterhood. And I remember being with you recently where you were getting phone calls about your friends that were really suffering. And you're like, man, this is no different. This is really no different than what's going on the adolescent side. Except, these adult men have probably more words and more, they're further along in their adulthood, so they can actually express how they feel openly when they're having mental struggles, where with teenagers, it's a little bit harder for teenagers and kids, I think. So I think that moving into the veteran space makes so much sense.
It was logical.
it's so logical just because of what you guys have for a background in general and all the people that are hurting. That's not to say, and they're actively hurting. Like, you can see it, you read about it. And, I know that the suicide rates for veterans is like through the roof. And I mean, if we could do something on that side too, then that just kind of doubles our mission and, allows us to do something even better.
Yeah, we met with General Hammer from the FDVA the other day, and suicide rates have decreased, but only like by 4 or 5%, which any percent, of course, is a big, big step. But there's still too much. They're still too high, and I think we are, talking about a what could be a pretty common disorder. We were talking to Marissa this morning about just parachute shocks. I mean, there's hundreds. My kid's a parachutist, right? He's not a big fan of jumping out of planes right now. He thinks every time he does, it's a disaster. I mean, it's crazy. But I do believe that the veterans, identifying this issue with veterans. It's not like we're creating a whole nother veteran thing. It's this issue. Addresses impacts our children and the older when they become adults. But veterans, and then like me, I've been retired 20 years, and here I am sucking my thumb in the corner of the bed going, why am I having these? I didn't even know what a panic attack was. I was flipping out. And I'm just, and I know that if, there's a whole bunch of guys and girls that have seen it I didn't fight in these two crazy wars. There's a lot of people out there to see it. And I think, now that we've met and we're going to be looking at legislation now to get these alternative events covered. Because, what came out in that conference was, and Don comment this, is like the current, protocols of just pharmaceutical drugs and therapy, especially when it comes to RBE, repeated blast exposure, and even RHI with kids and stuff. It just doesn't cut it. It's not getting us anywhere.
And that's 2 decades, right? So when I was talking about the work I was doing with military musters 20 years ago, and it still hasn't in 20 years time hasn't really gotten, there's no significant shift or improvement. The high suicide rates are still there. I mean, that's a long thing, but look at the parallels, right? The high op tempo for veterans in military and training alongside kids in sports, right? And high up tempo in sports. The repeated, they don't have the rest. So there's a lot of things that just cross over into the world. That's why it's easy to pick that up and just, it's not like we're really overburdening ourselves, because it's really a lot of the same things. RBI or RBE to RHI, a little bit different, but so there's some nuances, but there's a lot of the similarities and treatment options. Right. Then it's even more compounded if you think about the people who are in military or separated, but were prior athletes.
Prior lots of issues with Marines coming in. And Marissa mentioned it this morning. I'm like, well, you can't screen for that. Those are the kind of guys and girls we need to come in there angry. They want to go. Right. They want to go mess somebody up, dude. You can't be saying, you can't join the Army because you play contact sports. But, to your point. And so, Stacy, you're coming in CEO. We got a lot coming on, going on. What do we, we've come a long way. The conference was, for our audience, we held the first conference in the history of mankind on repeated head impacts and repeated blast exposure. And these 3 musketeers with Nancy put that whole puppy together. I didn't do anything. I just came up with the idea. So, Stacy, where are we going this year? What would you like to do with the foundation for our audience? Sue and Don and, got it, this far, and, Sue's still going to, be a significant presence in this organization, because I am, just going to be that face. That's why I flip her. She's like, I just flip stuff over the fence, and she's like, oh, and she catches it all, man, and she keeps it going. So we're running with it.
All I know is on Sunday you were real busy, because I had about 67 emails, and I was like, calm down for a minute, Bruce.
That was my email catch-up day, man. I mean, I was 300 into it. I'm like, dude, I got to get these out of here, man. So, but all of you comment on this. Where have we been? and where are we going to go as a foundation to, not only keep the momentum, but increase it, right? And put the pressure on the right people to address this issue for our children. I mean, because we can have a safer society. We can have contact sports. We can have the most lethal military in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And we, we're not, like you said, you all have said it, we're not taking anything away. And I think that's part of our appeal is let's keep what we have, but man, can we make it better? Right. So, how are we going to make it better, Stacy?
So I think we've come a long way, in the last couple years. It's so crazy to me to think that this foundation is only 3 years old, because the amount of
thank you,
ground,
Sue and Don.
Yes, the amount of ground that has been covered in such a short time is it's unfathomable in this industry. This last year, it was a lot of the small baby step growth that Don talked about. We're picking up grant dollars, letting the foundation world know who we are and that we're not going away. We're getting bigger and badder, and we'll be back. So it's, there's a lot of baby steps as far as outreach and engagement, becoming a part of some good organizations out there who have been around for a long time, like Project Play and the Aspen Institute, Safe States. So becoming a part, not just a part, but I hope this resonates with you, a respected partner in those networks, which is really hard for new nonprofits to, one, get access to become a part of groups
for this
like
age,
that.
right?
Yeah, at this age, but to be respected. And Bruce, they're knocking on the door on, can you guys do this? Can you do that? So it's very much still about that community outreach and that growth, becoming a bigger part of those networks, having a larger presence, and getting our Mac app out there, getting the information out there, increasing the engagement from a foundation perspective, becoming a bigger part of Project Play. Taking over some other areas for Project Play. We're in, I think, 2 areas right now, Suzanne, correct? So we're going to be going into more of those areas. But also, we've got a lot that's come at us from the summit. A lot of the doctors, a lot of the research. So we want to increase our research and do more of it. And I think we're finding new directions to take some of this research, both on the youth side, but also on the veteran side, and just expanding that message more. And just, I don't want to say we're flying, but we're flying. You guys went from crawl to run to fly. We skipped the walk stage. So we've got a lot of work to do in this next year, but I still feel it's still a lot of research and a lot of engagement, and stepping up into larger roles within the community. And we're storming DC in May. So we're knocking on the legislature's door, and we'll be in that town for a full week. God help them all. And we're ready.
It's going to be great.
Yeah.
Well, Suzanne, you're the pilot that got this airline moving, man. So, and Stacy, you mentioned the app. I am so excited about the app. So, talk about the app. How do we get in there? What's this app going to do? And, because I think we're getting ready to, we're going to have like a beta. We're going to have a beta project too. I need to do a little bit more writing on that. But talk about this app, because I think that this app puts us as a foundation on a map as being a partner for parents, and their children. I mean, it's there's nothing in this app that I just think it's such a blessing to be able to to get this out there. And so Suzanne, talk about this. This is kind of your baby, man. I mean,
it's really not. It's more Stacy's baby, because she wrote the grants for it. So
I asked you the question, so I mean, we'll talk about that. Hollywood Squares, man.
I know. Dang it. Can we switch them around?
All right. What would you like? All right. So Suzanne, as we get ready to close out this episode, what would you like to talk about? And we'll save the app for somebody else.
Oh, no, we can talk about the app. I'm excited about the app. I think the app's going to be great. I think that it, the more that we, when we started doing these things and engaging in the community. We're trying to decide if that's really, if that's what we want to do. Do we have the bandwidth to do that? And I think it's probably the best way for us to actually get our message heard is to be in the community and educate. But I think the app is going to be a big part of that. And I think if we pair those two, the app and say some sort of a training for coaches, I think they go hand in hand. And it allows the coaches to know what to look for. It allows the parents to know what to look for. When my son got a concussion, I didn't know what to look for, and we went to a concussion specialist. And funny enough, and I don't even know that I've told you this, the first thing the concussion specialist did was push drugs on Sawyer, and I was like, nope.
Oh my!
Yep, 2 drugs. First one was an antidepressant, and another one was something that mom took. That
good Lord!
Oh wow!
Yeah, I was like, absolutely not. And we left there, and Sawyer said to me, "Mom, that doctor did not like you very much." And I said, "Well, he didn't like the fact that I wouldn't do what he told me to do, but I wasn't going to put my 13-year-old son on drugs that I've already seen."
This happens all the time in this country.
Yeah, and I didn't even know that was a thing. So to let parents know that they have an option, and they know, I think more than anything is that they're their child's advocate. And if they really get the information that they need, and hopefully our app is that place for them to get that information, then they can, mitigate those situations where they think, oh, well, the doctor's always right. Well, sometimes the doctor isn't always right. And sometimes if it doesn't feel right, it's probably not right.
I think we should probably add an FAQ section to the app about should the doctor recommend drugs, and I would and then we could say, hey, you should get another opinion, that's for sure, because it is completely, until those drugs are warranted. How do you give those a preventive measure? You give them a drug that you're going to can become addicted to right off the bat?
No, because there weren't it wasn't like a benzo or anything like that. It was more like a and it would only have been for a short amount of time. But I felt really uncomfortable with giving my 13-year-old son those drugs. Ironically enough, he's 6 months later had post-concussion syndrome and was seeing auras and stuff. We brought him to a neurologist, and she actually put him on the exact same medicine that the concussion specialist was going to put him on for 30 days.
At least you brought him back for a post-concussion syndrome. A lot of parents don't even know that's a thing, And that's
but I think it's important that parents have that information. Like I wouldn't have even thought that they would have put my child on drugs for recovering from a concussion. So yeah, I think you're right. I think a question like FAQ is a great idea.
So Don, closing. Yeah, go ahead, Suzanne.
I was just going to throw Dawn under the bus for the app because I think just to kind of leave the audience with this, there's a lot of information out there that we do know. There's a lot more that we don't know. And with society being as digitally driven as we are, everybody wants to find information the fast way, right? They want it organized. They want it fast. They want to know they can go to a place and get everything they want. That's why they go online to the doctor RX or whatever they call it online to look up, what's wrong with me or my child.
WebMD, yeah.
WebMD. There we go. So
I'm on there all the time.
The thought was to bring all the information, to a central source where parents could find just everything they need to know, or as much as we can tell them to prepare them. Because as you just pointed out, Suzanne, and I've got 3 boys, I knew nothing about concussions prior to coming here, other than what the coaches would tell me. Oh, Will hit his head today. If he ends up a little dizzy or has a headache, follow up with your doctor. That's what we get, as parents. And unless you're a parent who digs in and finds out more, but most of us don't know. And we don't, there's so much that's different now in sports than when we were kids. We didn't play year-round contact sport. We didn't play year-round football or year-round soccer or year-round anything. We had seasons. And so we're running our kids through, year-round seasons, training, and there's there's a lot of points that we don't know as parents. And Bruce, you talk about this all the time. The same with kids as we do with veterans. It's often the training where we're harming our kids the most, right? It's not that they played the game, but what they're doing in between the game, all the contact that's occurring during practice or in training. And, there's so much that I think we could do better as a society if we know. And that's kind of the importance of the app, right? Let's play to society's whims. Let's give an app, right? A centralized source of information that is very transparent in information. We're not biased one way or the other. We want to know what the reality is, and we want to make sure that other people have that information where we as parents, often do not feel like we have that.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. No, it's so imperative that I think between the book and the app, we've got a platform of information that's not been, it should be replicated. It should be a lot more. We shouldn't have to do this, right? I mean, that's why this foundation exists, is nobody's addressed this issue. And and even for veterans, I mean, the VA is just starting to wrestle with this. And just think of what that means for the 20 years of veterans that are not here, incarcerated, that have lost their jobs, gotten other than honorable discharges, bad contact discharges. And then for the parents, just think of all those kids that have been incarcerated or that are not here, or that as adults suffer.
Or just suffering.
They're suffering in silence, right? And trying to find a way home. When now we know there's treatment options that didn't even exist 3 years ago that we can bring to them. So, I mean, I wanted the audience to get to know the team. You guys are the heart, and girls, you girls and guys are the heart of this organization. And I thank the Lord every day for having either run into you, or for you being part of my family or our family, and what you have accomplished in 3 years is truly amazing. There is such a problem. I was on that ayahuasca retreat this weekend, and as you deal with your own internal issues, you start to expand awareness. And I became absolutely overwhelmed when I looked at not only the veterans that I was suffering with, but looking at Mac and all the other children and parents that are out there and adults dealing with this. I'm like, where the heck do we start? It's so big, but we have started. There's no doubt that you guys have started something that is resonating with everybody we talk to, from one person to another. I mean, people are texting us, people to bring on the podcast. They're so excited about they're already talking about next year. We haven't even started planning for next year yet, and we're going to have
stressing about it. Don't worry. Yeah.
We will. I got the master plan. We need to we just got to put the pieces in place. Nothing impossible. And we got to keep going. And then, we just converted the first tackle football team in America to flag.
That's amazing.
From PAL.
That's amazing.
Right. And and we're going to keep going. I mean, it's, and I think you are the folks that got this going. And I cannot thank you enough for what you have accomplished, for what you're doing for our parents, for our veterans. And it's all about you. So, I just really appreciate the time you took to come on the show and talk about the many things that we've done and what we're accomplishing now. And I am so proud of every one of you. And so is our audience. Well, they know they're not, they should, because this is how you're going to keep caring about us. So thank you so much for coming on the show. And maybe we'll have another round. Well, maybe we'll have a podcast about the conference next year. We got it all planned out. What we're going to do, get everybody fired up about it.
Yeah, maybe do like a quarterly or biannual update.
Yeah,
and it's great to see expansion, right? Denny to the team. The team's growing a little bit. This is going to be a big chapter this next 12 months. So, let's
super big. We work with everybody. Biggest Switzerland out there.
So get back to work.
Yeah. So all right, get back to work. All right. Well, God bless you all. You have a great night, and we'll just keep coming up with those great ideas. You're doing amazing. All right.
Take care. You too.
Take care.